Dinner and a Book is supported by the Rex and Alice A. Martin Foundation of Elkhart, celebrating the spirit of Alice Martin and her love of good food and good friends.
Author Fawn Weaver restores Nearest Green to his true place in history, a true bourbon distiller. While supporting the history of Nearest Green, Weaver herself creates a new brand of whiskey, the first woman to do so. How did she, her husband Keith, and her friends come together to recharge Nearest Green's reputation, and in so doing create a new reputation for Fawn Weaver in her book, Love and Whiskey? My guest, Doug Farmwald, is no stranger to creating a perfect cocktail. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Gail. Appreciate it. It's always fun.
I'm so glad to have you here. You're going to save me in some instance here.
Oh,
My next step, we're
We'll
going to
see.
try something. So we just want to say what we're making. I'm making a chicken with Jack Daniel and some cream and some lemon juice and some dried thyme. And we're going to have that as the first course. And you are making what?
I'm doing a sweet potato casserole, so I'm boiling the sweet potatoes right now.
Yes.
And they don't take quite as long to boil as regular potatoes,
Yep.
so they're not going to take long at all. And then I'm going to candy some pecans, and we'll make a casserole out of that.
Oh, it's wonderful.
With Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniel, of course. And what I want to say is, I have done this once before, in which you light whiskey or bourbon or something in a pan.
And I was here for
and you
that.
were here, and the flames went everywhere. So we did not heat this up. And my dear friend Doug is going to, let's see, how much am I going to put in there? I want to make sure I have the right amount. We want to have a half cup of Jack Daniel in here, maybe a little less. And I do have some melted butter and some oil. And I would say, would you say that's a half? Right there. Now, we turned the heat off. This is not hot at all. And I don't know whether to leave the room or just stand back. Ooh. This Jack Daniel is being stubborn, right? Maybe it has to be warmer. Should I put the heat on?
Let's see.
He's going to try it again. See, this is what you do in your kitchen. You have to try things before you do it, for real. Ooh. Maybe we don't have to heat this up. Isn't this amazing?
It's not wanting to catch.
Doesn't want to catch, so we aren't going to push this. We're going to let it just sit and soak into the chicken, right?
Well, and as you cook it, it'll cook off. The alcohol
It will cook off, yes,
So
yes.
flaming it, that's all that does. It just looks a little more spectacular.
Yeah, and believe me, I can go without spectacular. And so I'll just heat this up, and you're looking at your sweet potatoes. So we do want to talk about the setting of this story, a true story. It takes place in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Home of whiskey.
Home of Jack Daniels.
Yes.
Whiskey. And it's Jack Daniels whiskey. Jack Daniel is the individual.
I learned something about that. It was very confusing at first. But, you know, it is a very interesting story about how they went about brewing or creating, what's the word? Manufacturing. Distilling this drink. And the interesting thing was, it was a black man who discovered the process. And of course, we never heard about him. We heard about the owner of the distillery. And Fawn Weaver, she wants to restore the reputation of the man who created Jack Daniel. That's what we're doing today. And I am cooking my chicken here. I did cook it earlier because I didn't want to wait forever and ever. And we do have whiskey in here.
You do that. I'm going to drain the potatoes.
Okay, you drain, and I'm going to add some thyme, dried thyme to this chicken. And we're going to let this, I can smell the bourbon. I can smell it. It smells very good. So we put in dried thyme, and we're going to add onion, chopped onion. So we do have to cook this a while. And I just want to get this going too, so that we have our ingredients on the way. It's starting to bubble, but this onion will be cooking, and we're just going to let that cook by itself. At the very end, we're going to add cream. This is going to be such a wonderful cream sauce.
And while you're doing that,
Okay,
I've
let's see what you're
melted,
doing.
About half a cup of butter and 3/4 cup brown sugar, and we're just going to coat these pecans with that.
Oh, that sounds like a
So
nice
let that
idea.
cook a little bit, about a cup of pecans. Let that all melt down.
You
and
go
coat.
down to the south to buy pecans too. We have, the interesting thing is this town of Lynchburg, even though the name suggests activities that we want to back off from, this is a most integrated town. The people, the
Right.
black and the white people got along perfectly during this
And
historical time.
One, it's a small town, and it was not a particularly wealthy town until the distilleries came in. And so that there wasn't that much difference. It wasn't a
Right.
plantation town. It wasn't anything that benefited any sort of racial animus.
They got along so well. And we've got a wonderful picture we'll show you of two older ladies who had a wonderful time watching TV soap operas together. And they're not token, a
No,
couple.
it was interesting because in the book, Fawn Weaver interviews citizens, white and black, and they all say, no, it's a great place to grow up. Integration wasn't a big deal. We ate in the same restaurants, we'd sit at the same tables,
Right.
had to go in different entrances.
Yeah.
And so there was,
Blacks would come in the back, and then they'd join their white friends up in front and had ice
Yeah.
cream. So strange, but it worked. It worked. I shouldn't be one to say it worked, but it was an interesting place. And Fawn gets involved here in this town a little bit after they had the riots in Charlottesville, here
Right.
in our own lifetime.
and it was odd because she read an article while she was in Singapore. So Fawn Weaver had been a successful business person and writer
Yes.
before any of this.
And she lived in California. She and her husband were sort of venture capitalists and created
had a ranch.
companies. Yes.
So she read an article in Singapore about that mentioned a little bit of the legacy, but didn't really go into it, and was fascinated by it, wanted to learn a little more about it. And that's how she started on the journey. And then eventually felt called to write this story. Oops, that's a little bit
there.
hot.
You know what? When this gets going, it really gets going, doesn't it?
So I'll take that off the heat.
Yes, there you go. And it'll simmer, it'll quiet down.
Nice and caramelized.
Yeah, very nice. Great. You know how to do this. This is wonderful for a fall dinner, Thanksgiving, or even Christmas. Sometimes
that later.
I sometimes even serve both at the same holiday.
Yeah, and a lot of people do like the sweet potatoes on the Thanksgiving table. This would be a good way to do it. So I've got some butter and sour cream, brown sugar in with the potatoes, kind of mashing that all together. And we'll put about 1/3 of a cup of Jack Daniels in. Which is,
Oh, I love this part. This is my favorite part, when you put the Jack Daniels in.
yeah, maybe just
Oh, a little
Little bit
more, a
more.
little bit more. Make it exciting. And what else are you going to put in there? Do we have
And
everything in already?
well, that is the main ingredient. So we're going to kind of mix that up.
Yeah. Oh, this is really smelling so nice. Really and truly. We have a picture of Ernest Green. Am I saying that correctly?
Nearest Green.
Yes, not Ernest.
Who
Nearest.
started, and the story is a little more complex than it at first sounds. So they both, Jack Daniel and Nearest Green, both worked for a local farmer and preacher named Dan Call,
Yes.
who was the whiskey distiller. And Nearest Green was the one who taught them the process of mellowing, which is now called the Lincoln County process. And it wasn't new, he didn't invent it, but he brought it to scale.
Yes.
And because there had been mentions of that far earlier.
I love to cook like you do. Just open it up
Especially
and shake
with
it.
the spices. You know.
Yes.
When I cook, I never measure the garlic. When I bake, I never measure the vanilla.
Just slosh it in. Yeah.
So some cinnamon and nutmeg.
So
it's going to go
and then you're going to pour that into
in a baking dish.
And then we put it in the oven, and then that's it, ready to go. You know, this story was interesting, the way they got involved, this couple from California, and the people in the town wondering who this couple is coming in and looking at everything.
That's kind of typical of a little town, but particularly a little southern town.
Yes, who are these people? Who is this
These
black
California
couple coming
people.
in from California? They're asking questions.
And I think the Weavers had a little more concern about being a black couple going to Tennessee than any of the locals did.
Yes, yes, exactly. So you have all these things going on, all these themes going on, and they do buy the house.
They buy the farm.
They buy the farm for $1 million, wasn't it?
Like $1.4 million. And so the Dan Call farm is where what eventually became Jack Daniel's whiskey distillery. But they had bought some other land as it grew. So this original farm was still there as a farm. And so they just felt so enamored of the story, they bought it. Now, it must be nice to be able to just decide on the spur of the moment, I want to buy this $1 million farm.
We don't know so much of their history, but I think they were just starting this career.
They had no background in distilling.
No.
She was an author and a brand manager and a publicist, in many ways very much like Jack Daniel.
Yeah.
Jack Daniel was not the master distiller. He was the master salesperson, the master brand manager. And he was very good at moving the product that Nearest Green was in charge of making.
Well, they get all excited. They buy the farm. The people get to know them.
And this is going to go in the oven.
That's going to go in the oven. And we're just going to take a short break here. We want to show you some pictures of the townspeople of Lynchburg. They are true people. They are real people. And so you will enjoy meeting some of them. When we come back, we're going to make our drinks. We're going to have a sip of Jack Daniel's whiskey made by the man, Jack Daniel. That's a lesson I had to learn. We'll be right back. And our book is Love and Whiskey by Fawn Weaver. My guest is the ever popular, famous Doug Farmwald. And I love having
famous
you.
Famous is a bit much.
But to me you are. And you can do any book, and I always enjoy having you. You're willing to try anything.
Well, that's I think part of cooking and part of being a reader.
Yes.
Is expand your horizons a little bit. Give it a shot.
That's it. That's dinner in a book to a T. So while you're getting that ready, I have now heated up my onions. We're going to add the whipping cream. This is not a low-fat dish because I've used cream, but you can do exactly what you like. If you want to add milk, if you want to make it very, your no fat milk, anything that you're used to, just go ahead and do what you like to do.
You could even use like oat milk or almond milk.
Sure. And I had to change my diet because I can't have dairy products. So anyway, we're going to heat this up. And you have all those eggs to get in yet? Okay.
Well, and it's important when you're doing a cheesecake to do the eggs one at a time and to have them at room temperature. And you want to blend them until they're just incorporated.
Looks marvelous to me, just marvelous.
So it's 4 packs of cream cheese.
Yes.
2 cups of brown sugar. half a cup of cornstarch, half a cup of Jack Daniels, and a little vanilla.
I think that's wonderful.
And just blend that until everything is just incorporated. Because you don't, if you get too much air in a cheesecake batter, it'll rise and then fall and it'll crack.
Oh dear.
So
anyway, I'm going to put the chicken back in. It's going to be in the cream sauce. And we'll start working on our 2 drinks that we're going to have with our nearest green, but actually it's a Jack Daniel with the S.
I'm putting this into a graham cracker crust in a springform pan. I made this earlier just because it's a little time consuming. But you can make a graham cracker crust, from scratch. It's not that hard. Just takes a little bit of time. We'll
So we're going to
down in there.
heat my cream up with the chicken. And oh, that's beautiful, Doug. Lovely.
Well, then this is going to go in the oven.
All right, let me open it for you.
Now, cheesecakes take a while to bake.
Yes. So normally, did
Can
you
open
say an
that
hour?
a little bit more?
About an hour?
Take at least 45 minutes to an hour at 350.
And how do you know when it's done?
It should be done when the edges are firm and look a little dry, but the center, about the size of a quarter, is still jiggly and still looks a little bit wet.
There you go. There is the secret.
And a lot of people will say you need to do a cheesecake in a water bath. I don't.
That's something new, isn't it?
Well, it's not so much new, but the humidity helps to prevent it from cracking. What I've found, if you just stick a pan of water on the bottom shelf, that's enough. And depending on what you're going to do with it, if you're going to top it with fruit or chocolate or whatever, do you really care if it cracks?
No, I don't care. I want it to taste good. And
Now,
if
while
the
it's
chocolate,
baking,
Yes.
I'm going to make a topping for the cheesecake. And this is really simple. It's just chocolate chips. I use dark chocolate, and I think that goes well with the whiskey, and cream. And I'm just going to melt these two together and then let that cool until it becomes basically a frosting. And I think this is, especially the sweet potato casserole and things like that, I think this is something that in Lynchburg you would find on a lot of tables around the holidays.
I've never made a cheesecake.
People think they're hard. I make cheesecakes all the time, and everyone's, oh, how do you do that? They're so hard to do, and you got to bake them.
Well, you saw how
it's
he
really
did
not.
it. He did it like in 5 minutes.
It is just a little bit of blending, and then just being patient. The most difficult part is doing the graham cracker crust, and that's not hard. A lot of people will say that you should use a measuring cup to push it up against the sides. I just say wash your hands and use your fingers.
Okay, there you go. That's the way the lady would have done it down in Lynchburg, I bet. Clean hands.
Yeah, and it's not terribly difficult.
And I'm adding a little something to this dish. I grow basil in my kitchen. I have it everywhere. So I've got to have some basil in here. To me, a dish is nothing without basil. And now I am going to put some ice in these 2 glasses, and we're going to try our Gentleman Jack. Now tell me about Gentleman Jack versus the whiskey you have.
Right, I have Jack Daniel's Old Number 7, which is the primary brand.
Yeah.
And part of that is sort of a reaction when Tennessee changed their laws around prohibition. They renumerated the distilleries, and so Jack Daniel's distillery was no longer number 7.
I see.
He liked it, and so he made the brand of whiskey Old Number 7 in honor of his original distillery. Now, Gentleman Jack is the premium version of Jack Daniel's. So there's some extra mellowing, basically extra
Right here.
aging, and they take a little more time in the blending. And both of these, Tennessee whiskey actually technically qualifies as bourbon. It meets the same legal standards, but it has an extra process. So to be called Tennessee whiskey, it has to be filtered through maple charcoal between the still and the aging barrel.
See, it's very complicated. You have to be smart to be a distiller. You really do.
So this is all blended now.
And I'm going to put a little bit of triple sec in each one of these glasses. And then we're going to add Gentleman Jack. and some mint, and we will
Ooh,
have
that sounds good.
another drink that we
Now
like.
this is all melted. I'm just going to let that cool down to room temperature. It'll be like a frosting.
Okay, I'm adding some lemon juice and a little lime juice in here. And I used to do this with a fork, and then I bought us one of those you put the lemon in and squeeze it. Of course, where is that? At home. So I'm going to use the fork method again, and we'll get some more juices in here. I love this citrus. Actually,
And the citrus
bourbon.
goes well with the bourbon. In this case,
Bourbon
Tennessee
is a
whiskey.
little bit strong for me. But now I'm going to just pour it in, aren't I?
Well, I have a jigger if we need it, but basically just do about 2 fingers.
Okay, put your fingers there and let me do it. When people say 2 fingers, let's show what you mean
And just
about.
pour up to the top of my finger.
You see that? That's what that means.
There you go.
Okay. Is that strong enough, do you think?
Well, you already have some liquid in there.
I do. Okay, 2 fingers.
there.
There. Oh, I went over. That's 4 fingers.
okay.
That's for a 2-fisted.
Well, and you
drink.
had some juice in there to begin with, so it's not as
Yes.
much as it looks like.
All right, then I'm going to put in a little bit of mint. Now, I do like mint juleps, but I'm not a bourbon whiskey drinker. So this is exciting for me, and I'm glad Doug is here to lead the way. And so here we go. And how's your chocolate doing? Well,
It's just cooling.
all
And so
right.
we're not going to get that right away because this cake's going to have to bake
Yes.
for an hour or so. We're not going to do all of that on air. But everything is online. You can follow the same recipe, and it's not that difficult.
And we have it online. Yes, here are 2 drinks.
I would just give those a quick stir.
Oh, yes, a quick stir with my fork. How's that? No, that's bad. I should have this gizmo that looks fancy, right? You don't use a fork.
Did you want to sample it?
Of course. I'm going to give you this one. Looks prettier.
The one with the extra.
Cheers. Yes.
Salute.
Yes, salute to Jack Daniels, to Ernest Green.
Nearest green.
Why do I keep calling him Ernest?
Same letters.
He is an earnest man, but he's nearest to the whiskey.
That's a good drink. That is a good cocktail.
You like it?
Yeah.
It's mild, isn't it? I can taste the fruit. We put in less whiskey. Good. Okay, what we're going to do is have another sip. We're going to gather ourselves. We're going to present our dinner here
wonderful.
to everybody. We enjoy your company. You can come and have a drink. I don't think you'll find us, but
If you leave hungry, it's your own fault.
it's your own fault. All right, we'll be right back. Well, here's what we did today when we were talking about love and whiskey, and you're making an old-fashioned.
I'm
just
making
a
an
simple
old-fashioned
drink now.
using some of Uncle Nearest's whiskey.
Yes, the man who finally got recognition for what he did, what he offered to, what he had to do for Jack Daniel, and so
And an old-fashioned is a very simple cocktail. It's just whiskey,
Yes.
a little simple syrup.
Right.
You can traditionally use a sugar cube, but it's hard to get those to dissolve.
all right, a little
Water,
bit of
and
fuzz.
I like a little club soda because I think the effervescence brings out some of the nuance from the whiskey and some of the nuance from the bitters. you
I
put
follow
that
in your
over ice.
footsteps. I think it's amazing, and you're going to enjoy Uncle Nearest, 1884. And Fawn did succeed in creating a bottle for this man.
Well, not just a bottle, but a whole brand, a whole distillery. There are several versions of Uncle Nearest out now.
Yes, I've seen them in the liquor stores, so you might want to check that out. Well, I have a chicken dish here with some cream, and what did I put in there? I think I I put in some of this whiskey.
Whiskey cream sauce.
Yes,
Gentleman
this
Jack.
is Gentleman Jack cream sauce on my chicken. And then you
sweet
did
potato casserole with candied pecans. And then a Jack Daniel's cheesecake with a chocolate topping and pecans.
Oh, I wish you were here to look at this and to join in. This is beautiful, Doug. You are quite...
Well, I think whiskey is good to cook with. I don't drink a whole lot of it, but I like the depth of flavor it brings to a lot of dishes.
It has a lot of depth. That's what I've noticed, depth. And that's a strong depth, too. Well, I enjoyed having you here today. Let's have a final toast.
Final toast.
Old-fashioned drink.
An old-fashioned.
Here, and to you, thank you for joining us. Remember, good food, good friends, good books make for a terrific life. We'll see you next time.
This WNIT local production has been made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Dinner and a Book is supported by the Rex and Alice A. Martin Foundation of Elkhart, celebrating the spirit of Alice Martin and her love of good food and good friends.